the recognizable line drawn between different sections of a game, the graduation from your current point to the next. A staple of game design on the NES, as well as other consoles. A way to explain to your friends where you are in a game, or which parts drive you insane. Everyone has that one level they love to play, or the water temple that they hate. A measurable account of time and space within a game. A mentally satisfying portion of the gameplay experience. There are countless words used to define this mechanic. The most common one ever used that's been burned into my pixelated brain is level. This palindromatic term is practically used universally to define different sections of a game. The word itself is simple, short, and used throughout thousands of video games. So I'll be using the term level as the standard term when attempting to explain other lesser terms used in its place. As far back as I can remember, parts of games were called levels, even if the game explicitly labeled them otherwise. Me and my friends didn't care, we just called them levels. The first place I probably ever remember seeing the word was in the game Legend of Zelda, and I spent countless hours playing that game, so it just stuck with me over the years. The term level is fitting for more reasons than just being definitions of part of a game. The term itself has been used to represent different difficulties in terms of level of difficulty, and I think it holds a fair transition into levels of games. Commonly, the higher levels you progress to, the harder it gets. So when you look at something with a difficulty level of 1, it's pretty simple. In the same way that level 1 of video games is usually pretty basic and rudimentary. And as you get further in the game, your level increases, therefore your difficulty level increases. So it makes sense to that degree, a simple, timeless, and powerful word used in the video gaming world. The term stage is used a lot to define levels in a game too. Remember, I'm using levels as my go-to term to define portions of a game here. But stage is a very common term as well. Just to name a few classics that use the term stage, there's Contra, Castlevania, and Kid Icarus, but there's countless others. The term stage makes sense in a couple of different ways. First, a stage, as in a play, is a planned out setup using various characters, props, and scenes to put on a show. The same way a stage in a game has predetermined enemy placement, item placement, background, characters, players, or enemies. So you can kind of associate the game setup as being staged. Stage also makes sense if you think about it in a way that there are stages to a business project, meaning a project goes through stages of development and planning and to the final product. Each stage has a set amount of time, effort, and execution involved before the next stage can be approached. The same way a stage in a video game has to have effort and time put in it to be completed. World is one of the earliest terms for a level in a video game as well. It's used in countless video games, as well as the most iconic video game series of all time, Super Mario Bros. It was used in the first Super Mario Bros. Game, where a lot of people probably saw it for their first time ever. It was also used in Super Mario Bros. 3 very fittingly, and it was also used in Super Mario World, where the name World is in the title itself. And like I said, Super Mario Bros. 3 uses the term world the best, I think. The reason I say this is because each world in the game has its own environmental attributes, making each section of the game feel like its own world. Everyone remembers World 4 when everything was bigger, or World 7 where everything was pipes, and that is a perfect depiction of how the word world should be used in video games. If you can describe part of a game based on its characteristics instead of just a sequential number, that's a world. For example, you could say the big world instead of World 4, or you can say the pipe world instead of World 7, and people will know what you're talking about. That's not to say the term world should not be used in other contexts. It is generously used in other games. It just makes the most sense when it's applied to a game like Super Mario Bros. 3. One term for a level I don't really see anymore is phase. This term applied mostly to old black box games like Gyromite or Wrecking Crew. In games like that, you commonly had the option to choose which phase you wanted to start on, which was always pretty cool. You can look at an entire phase setup and plan a strategy based on enemy placements, obstacles, so basically you can look at an entire screen before you even make the first move. No surprises or unseen hazards in phases. The term phase commonly reminds me of how people would explain someone's behavior at a certain age in life. In other words, they're going through a phase, which translates loosely how it applies to these games. The phases you go through don't necessarily increase in difficulty as you go through them the way worlds or levels would. In fact, there are some phases in the middle of Wrecking Crew I cannot stand, but a few phases later, they seem pretty simple. So it really is just a phase to go through. Some are difficult, some are simple, but in the end, you live to fight another day. Another term I don't see as much but still gets the job done is area. The most notable example I can think of for this word is Blaster Master. The concept of an area is a particular range of space that a player can travel through. Unlike most levels, worlds, or stages where the gameplay is completely linear, the gameplay style of areas, like in Blaster Master, is a wide open area where players can travel any direction, but still have definitive boundaries. Another attribute of areas is traveling back through areas to progress in the game. For example, in Blaster Master, once you complete Area 6, to get to Area 7, you have to travel all the way back through Area 6, all the way back through Area 5, back through Area 4, through Area 1, back to Area 2, and then you can finally get to Area 7. There were some other less popular terms to define a level too, one of which was Act. The first example that comes to mind using the word Act is the Ninja Gaiden series. Yes, Gaiden. I've been saying that all my life, and no Fred Savage Super Mario Bros. 3 commercial is going to change my mind. ACT was also used in Golgo 13, which was a good fit because the game had a lot of cinematics, so it felt kind of like a movie. Another term used is waves. Now that's common for like top-down shooters to represent like waves of enemies coming at you. The terms mission and operation were used almost interchangeably with military-style games, except Double Dragon, which uses the term mission to define its levels, which seems a little bit out of place. One odd term used in the game Rocking Cats was channels to define its different levels, but if you've played the game, you'd understand why they use that term. Some other terms I should mention without using specifics are chapter, section, floor, screen, scene, quest, scenario, sector, part, event, zone. Some other terms to mention are ones set specifically for certain game genres or game styles. Fighting games commonly use words you'd expect to separate fights, including fight itself, but also using things like round, match, battle, bout. Sports games would obviously use their appropriate terminology: inning, half, period, course and track for racing games. Some games can also use the literal location of the game to define their levels, such as temple, dungeon, castle, mansion, room, house, tower, mountain, land, things like that. So we've gone through just about every term we can to define different levels in these games. I'm sure there's a couple I've missed, but as long as I play video games, they'll always be called levels.